So we have a virtual panel discussion, and the topic is the future of accessibility. And so, what is the plan in 5 to 10 years? And so, how is technology kind of advancing, right, in today's world? As part of that, we'll have a insightful session. And yes, before we move on, so I would like to welcome our host, Rajdeep Manwani. So Dr. Rajdeep Manwani is an academician, a trainer, motivational speaker, life coach, counselor, and quiz master. So he is currently working as a professor and director of academic research at Sindhi College. So he's a triple postgraduate and a PhD, having completed his MCom, MBA, and MPhil, and also a doctorate in commerce. Rajdeep Manwani lost his eyesight due to macular degeneration at a very young age. By the time he turned 13, he had lost 65% of his vision, but that did stop him. He won a gold medal on topping both the MCom and MPhil examinations in Mysore University. He is an eloquent speaker, won several debates, and the best speaker in the international tape speech competition held by Toastmasters International in 2008. And he holds several records and awards during his time. And I would like to welcome Rajdeep. And yeah, I would like Rajdeep to kickstart the event.
Thank you so much, Krishna, for that wonderful introduction. I always say this that the entire family of disabled is like my family, and when family members praise you, you feel very nervous. Because a few days back, my wife praised me in front of her friends, and the very next day she asked for gold jewelry. So you never know what Krishna is up to, but thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I also remember another incident which happened several years back. I was called to be a panelist at a conference hosted by the Institute of Company Secretaries at Kolkata. And I had to stay there for around 3 or 4 days. And on the second day, I got a message from my son, who was around 7 years at that time. And the message was very confusing. The message read, "You are the best daddy in my whole family." And I was very confused. I thought I was the only daddy in his whole family, and I immediately rushed back to Bangalore. Thank God nothing had happened. But whenever family members praise you, you feel a little nervous. So thank you so much, Krishna, for that wonderful introduction. And let's kickstart today's accessibility seminar, the future of accessibility in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's start off with a small bit of information which you all might not know. You know, what's the similarity between the invention of the first prototype of the mobile phone by Martin Cooper for Motorola, the most deadly volcanic eruption in Mount Vesuvius, Italy, and today's global accessibility meet? The common thread between all these three is they all happened on May 17th. So you can imagine we are doing something epic today, as good as developing the prototype of the mobile phone or the big volcanic eruption which happened at Mount Vesuvius in Italy. Let's kickstart this very interesting seminar by a quote which I read. This quote was very interesting. It said that the problem with understanding accessibility is the inaccessibility of understanding. The problem with understanding accessibility is the inaccessibility of understanding. And to decode this entire inaccessibility of understanding and giving us a new perspective on what accessibility means, we have three very, very distinguished gentlemen among us who are going to talk us through this brilliant topic of what accessibility holds for us in the future. First in my panel, I have a disability and inclusion champion, a change agent, an amazing strategist, a technology person, a person who's a senior director and the head of engineering, and also the site leader at the development portal at Visa. A person who's really passionate about accessibility, a wonderful human being. Please welcome on the virtual stage Mr. Shankaran Srinivasan. Good evening, sir. Great to have you here.
Good evening.
Yeah. Next, we have an individual who is the head of design for WebEx. He leads a team of designers, researchers, and writers for this wonderful platform which we are all using today, the WebEx, which is a part of the Cisco group. He has been a co-founder of a company. He's worked as a product development manager at Microsoft. He has nearly 2 decades of experience in the field of web designing and accessibility. And looking at his family life, we can have something very interesting. He's quite an entertaining person. He has 2 dogs, he has 2 daughters, and only one wife. And he loves going to the mountains, the forests, and the ocean. So please welcome with a big round of applause to the virtual stage, Mr. Travis Isaac.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to have you. Last but not the least, we have the Vice President Engineering of Walmart Global Tech, an individual who is with Walmart for the past 13 years, was one of the associates and the founders of the IBC at the part when he was included in the IBC. He has been an amazing person who has dealt with web accessibility, who has looked at engineering. He is an individual who has an experience of nearly 20 years in the field of engineering and also in the field of merchandising, and has done some amazing projects for Walmart. So please welcome on virtual stage Mr. Rohit Ramanand. Good evening, Rohit. You're not audible.
Have I lost? Sorry. Thanks, Rajdeep. Thanks for that.
Yeah, okay. I got scared. I thought I've lost my connection. Okay. So let's kickstart this panel discussion with a common question to all of you all. I'll ask the question again and again in case you'll forget it. So we'll start off with Shankar, and Shankar likes to be called Shanks, which is quite a nice name, right? So we'd like to start off with Shanks, and we'll ask him this question. Shankar, what do you think is the accessibility journey for you so far? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, what does your organization entail to do in the future to improve accessibility in the next 5 to 10 years? So,
thank you, Rajdeep. Thank you, Raj. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Correct. Accessibility, for me to get involved more about the accessibility, I think the journey started 10 years back. My father retired, and after that in central government, and then he became scribe writer for helping visually impaired people in his retirement. So after retirement, so every year, he helps writing scribe and also teaches for the visually impaired people to pass the civil exam, the IAS exam. So one of the summer vacation when I went in, and then I understood, what it entails looking closely. Then when I came back, I thought like I should do something. I was at that time working for a bank and, in a technology side, and wanted to say that what can we do? The easier part was getting, writing a big check from big organization, supporting organizations such as GiftAbled or other organizations which are helping. That was the easy part. I really wanted to do where empower employees and help them see what they can do, get involved. And that is how my journey started getting involved, leading from the front. So currently I'm working at Visa. And one of the things that we help do is Visa has, everybody knows Visa across the different countries. And we think diversity and inclusion should be part of the agenda whom we want to do it. So we partner with different banks and helping what else can they do to help accessible. Some of the examples that I could give is, can we think of, applications such as, if you look at Barclays Bank, if you are taking a credit card or a debit card, a prepaid card, can we design in such a way that the cards, somebody who is visually impaired will be able to easily access and find out, hey, this is a debit card versus this is a credit card. That is one example where we partner with the different banks and trying to come up with a product. The other example that closer to the heart that what we are trying to do is many of the applications for helping accessibility. Are they really accessible, these applications? Engage with organizations such as GiftAbled and partner, and so that be part of the ecosystem and try to develop products that will be accessible for all. Back to you, Rajdeep.
Oh, thank you so much, thanks. And it's very important to make this distinction between what is what. I remember, sometimes I had a plastic card, my ID card, and I had a Visa card, and I don't know what I'm swiping over there at the ATM. So you can be in a lot of trouble. And this trouble can also arise in a hotel. I had gone to a 5-star hotel for a motivational talk somewhere, and they have these similar looking bottles. And I had asked the person over there, which is the moisturizer bottle and which is the shampoo bottle. He put the shampoo bottle in one hand. So I kept it at one side, the left side of the window, and the other one, that is the moisturizer, the other side. But the next day, I don't know when those persons came to clean, I think so they interchanged it. So when I went for bath, I put the moisturizer on my head and I came out and I put the shampoo on my face. So understanding those small things are very, very important. Otherwise, you can have not egg on your face, but shampoo on your face. So thank you, Shanks, for at least encouraging that, make that distinction for people with visual impairment and empowering organizations. Very nice. So we go to Travis. Travis, what has been your accessibility journey, and what does your organization, especially WebEx, look into the future for accessibility?
Yeah, thank you, Rajdeep. Yeah, for those who can't see me, I'm light-skinned, I have a beard, brown hair, glasses. I'm in a very plain office building in Seattle, Washington, and I'm honored to be included here. For me, my journey really has been one of introspection and trying to build empathy. And, for a long time in my career, I took for granted the privilege that I have to be sighted, and I can hear, and I'm able-bodied. And like many people in my field, accessibility and inclusion is just not a top-of-mind consideration because it doesn't personally affect me. And over the years, I sort of realized that there's this whole community, this whole world of people out here who I can impact through design. And, my experience here at WebEx has really been allowed me to sort of put that to work and really impact change that way. One of the things that I get really excited about what we do here is that with the acceleration of hybrid work, we truly do open up the world to people who couldn't go to an office for various reasons because they had some difference that just made it hard for them. And over the past 2 years into this pandemic, we've seen more and more people with these differences not only enter the workforce, but use our tools, give us new perspective and things like that. And so for me, the journey is really about how do we close that empathy gap? How do we bring that perspective? And how do we change our process and our tools to make these things top of mind rather than a process or something that we think about at the end of our development cycle, for example. But again, I'm more optimistic than ever. I mean, we have these tools that allow people who are blind or deaf, who have a processing difference or a language barrier, to participate, in scenarios like this where, a few years ago it had been very, very difficult. And I'm personally excited to play a part in that journey.
Very nice, Travis, and thanks for describing yourself to me. When you're describing yourself to me, I thought you were Albus Dumbledore, that J.K. Rowling, when you said it with a beard and white skin. But very nice. And we all do have our aha moments where we get into this accessibility field. And my aha moment, as you had, where you have to get into, was when I was in my 12th standard, and I was doing a subject called statistics. And in statistics, there was a topic called normal distribution, which is basically a bell-shaped curve. You know, all of you all know, most of you all
Yeah.
who are attending are from employees, and your increments are based on the normal distribution. So all of you all will be very wary of it. And I didn't know what is this normal distribution because I couldn't see. And every teacher told me, skip that topic. Don't worry, you can do another topic. But there was one teacher of mine, his statistic teacher, Mr. Vigneshwar Barry, who said, Rajdeep, why don't you come over to the staff room and I'll tell you what this normal distribution is all about. And you know what he did when I went to the staff room? He kept a towel on his head from the left to the right, and he made me touch it this way. And he said, see, this is the normal distribution, a bell-shaped curve. And he made me touch the nose, and he said, this is the mean, median, and mode. And he showed it to me tactilely, and that tactile description of a normal distribution completely changed my perspective of understanding maths and statistics, after which the barrier to understanding that was removed. So sometimes we just have to think out of the box and think in another way to remove those barriers and make things accessible for people in different fields. So thank you so much, Travis, for that wonderful perspective. Over to you, Rohit. Rohit, what do you think is your accessibility journey been, and what do you think is the future, and how does global tech, Walmart, contribute in this endeavor?
Yeah, thanks, Rajdeep, and it was great to hear both Shanks and Travis kind of talk about their examples and your example as well. That's fantastic.
And you know, Rohit, we'll do one thing. You can describe yourself for me. Like he said.
Yeah, let me do that. So I'm brown skinned and I have very little hair on my head. You know, I'm wearing a black shirt and I've got a white Zoom background that's kind of representing Walmart Global Tech and the accessibility group that we work with called WCare. So
wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful. Both of us have little hair on our head, you know. That's why I told my mother used to always tell me, "You'll come out shining on top." I didn't know that it'll come out this way, but
it's
whatever.
called the halo effect, Rajdeep.
Yeah, I know the halo effect. So correct. So I'm really shining on top. Yeah. Yeah, continue, Rohit. You can talk about
so coming back, like, you know, I also had a very personal journey to kind of start with in terms of accessibility, and it wasn't about building accessible technology. I had a manager who was, you know, had motor disabilities, and he used to kind of come to the office on a wheelchair, and you know, in those days, you know, our office campuses, and I was part of a multinational company, IT company. In Bangalore, you know, these campuses were like sprawling campuses that you know had multiple buildings and you know saunas and showers and cricket stadiums and everything, you know, part of them. But you know, they lacked the basic accessibility to the building, right? And so every day this manager would come in, you know, we didn't have mobile phones in those days, so you know we used to kind of plan. He used to call us when he was leaving home. And then we would kind of plan, okay, you know, with the Bangalore traffic, it'll probably take him X amount of time. And then, you know, 2 or 3 of us would just wait outside the building and then help him get into get over the steps into the building. And one day our company's CEO was actually watching this from a distance, and he kind of was like, oh my God, like what's happening here? And then he sent the security after us, you know, to kind of ask like what's going on here. And the security came and said, you know, sir wants to talk to you. And we were so happy that we were getting a chance to meet with the CEO. But he kind of apologized to us and said, you know, I'm really sorry for what happened here. And, you know, how long has this been going on? And we kind of talked about it. And the beauty of that was the entire campus was upgraded in a space of a week to have, you know, accessible restrooms, accessible ramps. And it was just fantastic to see the kind of change that came across the organization just because of one incident. And that's when we started to think about like, hey, we're also building software. And I was also part of a banking group pretty similar to what Shanks was saying. And we started to think about our applications and said that, hey, if this is a problem, you know, this is okay, physical accessibility. What about digital accessibility? And what happens with these applications? And that's when we started to really look at it. But you know, from that point where it was more, as Travis was saying, like very compliance driven and you know, kind of everything kind of stayed around, okay, if you didn't do this, then there's this penalty, or you didn't do this, and there's, something else. It is really more about trying to make sure that what we build is more and more accessible. So at Walmart, we're trying to kind of get to a situation where, we're trying to put this at the forefront of our design and kind of make it part of the design cycles than looking at it as an afterthought, because it is actually more expensive to go and try and make an application accessible, once it is actually built. So it's really something that you want to keep on the forefront. We have started with a lot of evaluation of where we are right now, because we do have technology that's already running, and trying to make sure that we are addressing some of the existing ones, while whatever we build new, we're trying to put in some standards and practices across our organization that will help our engineers and designers to really come up with more accessible solutions as we look at it. We're also looking at our talent pool and trying to make sure that we are more inclusive in that as well, because that kind of helps build that culture within an organization, and also helps us to address some of the challenges that might come up with people in these groups, where we can actually include these folks as part of the design cycles, as part of the testing cycles, and really look at them as we kind of ship these products out of the door. And finally, we are looking also at the future, because this discussion is all about what do we kind of see in the next 5 to 10 years. We are also investing into things like hackathons, where our themes are based around some of these topics, where we are kind of looking at what are the innovations we can really bring in, what are the new technologies we can really explore, and how can we really advance some of these things and be ahead of the curve, rather than following and being just doing something for the sake of compliance. But back to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. That one incident, and making accessibility in such record time is brilliant. And also getting a disability pool brings in so many advantages, because now there are research papers to show that people with disability stay in an organization nearly 95% more than so-called able-bodied people. Their tenure is much longer, and getting such people, their contribution is 20% more. This was a paper released by IAM recently. So getting them into the work pool is a big advantage in big ways. So thank you, Rohit, for bringing out that aspect and talking about accessibility. Now let's go to the second question, which we wanted to ask. Again, I want to ask this question to all of you all. Shankar, your question is, we know about normal disability, but there are a lot of people with profound disabilities. So what do you think is the technology and accessibility, or even in general in future, which is going to help people with profound disability? You have people with so many profound disabilities. People are deaf and blind together, and I've seen people with spinal injuries, and they have a problem in getting up from the bed. So what do you think is the role of technology in dealing with people with profound disability?
So I'll break it down into 2 or 3 different parts actually. So right now, disability, I would argue that people may be able today, but as we grow older, some of the faculty will not work properly, right? One of the things is people might be able to see today, but even after they grow older, sometimes the visual acumen comes down. Or the mental health, people can come down. So if you look at, because I was introspecting on this question, Rajdeep, what are things that we can do? But people longevity increases. At the same time, the people's ability to use their body sense organs may come down. So in that case, is there something health tech? I would say that a lot of changes will, I envision more number of health tech startups will come and try to bridge the gap. Then the other part of the technology, how it can help. People are used to using a lot of things that they can get the use of technology so that they can help. For example, suppose you cannot go out and eat food, right? Suppose it's not accessible, it's raining, and you are not able to walk or you are not able to drive, you can order in food. But is there something right now we are hearing a lot of technology, startups are coming in for, remote-based, drone-based delivery. So in the next future, my thing is technology is going to play a big role on addressing some of the needs that right now people are using other human beings to help. That is one aspect of it. To your pointed question of people having profound disability, I think there's a combination of human empathy, definitely something that we have to do. The second part is what can be done. Organizations have to think, is there something that we have to be creative enough to able to provide? And then we can think of job function classification. Maybe two people can do the job of one. If you want to provide employment for them, a particular job can be broken down into a couple of different parts, a different way of thinking, and able to address it. So these are some of the ways I think where forward-looking organizations be willing to change the way the existing ways things are doing, complemented by technology to help offset. I think the journey has just started. Right now, if you look, most of the organizations are definitely committed and not just for compliance, but there are passionate people across all organizations who want to make a change. The next level of the evolution, I think, is where more and more can be done from organizations. I think that's my perspective on this.
Wonderful, Shanks. And as you said, like, there is no guarantee that if you have a proper functioning body today, it will remain in the future. In fact, there was this very interesting seminar conducted by the American Association for Disabled. And over there, they had decided for a term which they use for so-called disabled people. And they said that we are going to call them differently abled. But in that same seminar, which was held somewhere in the 1990s, they said that the term which they will use for so-called able-bodied people will be TAB. And TAB over here means temporary able-bodied. They might be able-bodied today, but there's no guarantee that they'll have the same able body after a year or so, because we are in a era full of accidents, mental traumas. We are in a different stage. And talking about technology, wonderful, Shang. In fact, a lot of people are looking for the driverless cars where we don't have to rely on anybody. In fact, we are looking for some amazing technologies which will come in the future. In fact, Alexa has made a big difference. Yesterday I was about to I wanted to fall asleep, and I told Alexa, can you play me a lullaby? And the answer she gave was, usually I feel sleepy when I play a lullaby, but even then I'll play it for you. And then she started playing. So she's getting so so even robots are getting very, very technologically involved. So Travis, what do you think about the advancement in the field of technology and what it holds for people with disability and profound disability?
I was actually just thinking about the self-driving use case the other day, and that, I think I contemplated when the first car company that achieves that sort of level 4 autonomy of driving, what world of possibility does that open up for someone who cannot drive because they have a difference? And would they be required to get a license if their car can just drive them wherever they go? And does that, remove barriers for them? I also liked Shankar's point of, the gig economy and delivery services, how that has also removed some barriers for people. From a design perspective, I think over the next 10 years, we will continue to see advancements of different styles of input and control and different styles of output to accommodate people with difference. Voice UI are a top of mind example. You just shared that you use Alexa heavy. There are other kinds of assistants that work this way, and they accept more and more auditory input. And from a design perspective, we would love to see more applications and software and websites to allow people to fully control in really deep ways using their voice. But there are also other things like switch control using whatever motor function that you have, a visual control using gaze, et cetera. And we think those will only get more and more prevalent. One thing that we also get excited about, we're working on a product called WebEx Hologram, which for a sighted person allows them to put on a headset, and we can sit across from each other virtually, and we can inspect an object. What are opportunities that can inspire for things like tactile control? The example that you shared, Rajdeep, where you learn mean, median, and mode by someone draping a towel over their shoulders and letting you feel it. What if you could put gloves on your hand and do that virtually, where that tactile sensation is simulated for you on a pair of gloves or another wearable device for you. That those to me will only become more and more commonplace. And the way that we get there is we have to stop thinking about designing for accessibility and inclusion as something different than designing for usability. Like, it's just all design. And these other modes are just that. They're different contexts, they're different mode, they're different input, but they're not something that we do at the end. We sort of consider them like we would consider color or typography or fonts or information architecture. It's all kind of part of the process. And so as we evolve this field, we have to broaden our definition of what does input and output look like. One other example I think about too, there are a lot of people who have sensory processing differences where they want to consume information differently, visually. How do we think about, in the WebEx we use every day, I have a lot of incoming messages. For someone with a processing difference, that might be very overwhelming. I just want to read it one at a time. So how can you enable more and more of these modes and contexts to say, I want to consume information very slowly and visually, or very slowly and audibly, or I want to use my voice to control something, or I want to use this sensory motor device to go and control something. I think those things will really, really broaden, and that to me will really help those who have a profound disability, again, participate in discussion and work, just like, again, a temporarily able-bodied person would. It's all part of the same sort of sets of consideration. But we know that one size doesn't fit all, and we have to think about all of these considerations to really enable someone to fully use products like ours.
Very true, Travis. In fact, you were talking about describing visuals on the screen, and Google has come out with a visual description. So we couldn't see emojis first, but now Google, through its accessible technology, describes what's there on the screen. And even for people who have some motor disability, Microsoft has started gaming with using the eyes, as you said, the gaze, the Microsoft Eyes First. So you can actually play video games using your gaze and your eyes and moving it from screen to screen. So we are moving to a level which is at a different level. And as you were telling, people with difficulty in understanding, you have a lot of these test summarization programs for people with a little mental challenge, where they simplify the entire paragraph and they put it in small 2-3 lines so that it becomes easy for them to understand what is actually going on the screen. So with all these technologies, we go to Rohit, who's the master of technology, who will take us through this ride of what do you think is the technology and how is it going to help people with disability and profound disability?
Yeah, I think these are all great examples, and definitely the spectrum of profound disabilities is it's very vast, right? We talked about so many different challenges that are out there, and each one of them requires a very special kind of handling. Like, it's not a one size fits all that you can really say that, okay, here's a technology and this is really going to work and it's going to cater to all the different cases that are out there. Because I think each one needs if there's a way that we can kind of be special and kind of personalize these experiences, I think it makes it even more valuable to the person using it, because it knows exactly what that person wants or what that person actually needs when trying to interact with different systems. So for me, in terms of technology, I think the underlying thing that we'll see more, like you talked about the Alexa use case. I think as we get to artificial intelligence and machine learning, and as we get to conversational AI, particularly what things like Alexa are really doing, it is really conversational AI that's going to help personalize that experience for each one, because it's kind of interacting with you, it's learning what your preferences are, and then it's kind of storing that information it's processing that. It's kind of a feedback loop that goes back and kind of then the next time it kind of becomes a bit smarter in terms of how it kind of recommends stuff to you, kind of also becomes smarter in terms of the interaction itself. And so over a period of time, I can actually see this technology maturing even further to provide even deeper personalized experiences. You know, even I would say even today, some of these are still fairly generic in nature. And, you know, there's really a lot more that can be done both in the space of conversational AI, in the Internet of Things, right? Like, I mean, when you look at that and the way that a lot of these wearable devices today are, you can control a lot of things that are around your house and stuff like that. I mean, those are, I think, a tip of the iceberg that we've kind of touched at this point in terms of the use cases that Internet of Things can really help you with, right? It's there's a whole sea of possibilities out there that I think will really you know change the way. And then the one thing that I always keep talking about, it's a very simple thing, and you know, how many times do we have to keep remembering passwords and, you know, user IDs, and we keep forgetting them, and we really can't access the applications that we try to use themselves, right? Because we just can't remember them. I mean, I think things like image recognition, face recognition, you know, lip reading, you know, things like these where we can really see advancements using technology to solve a lot of these problems, and, you know, just make sure that people can easily access applications as against having to remember all this information, and you know, kind of even with the voice, you're going to have to call out a password or do something that's difficult to use. So I think you know, when I look at it, there's a lot of you know, I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of possibility with the advancement of some of these technologies that I talked about. But
wonderful, wonderful. I was reminded of an incident. You're talking about memory and so many things. You know, Alexa has come out with a new version of its with a camera. So if I want to open my cupboard and I don't know what I'm seeing, I can just focus the camera, and it's called Alexa Show and Tell, and it will actually capture the picture, and through its machine learning, go and process the picture and tell me what I'm actually seeing. So they're going to that level. And talking about memory, really, that's a difficult thing, right? For people, for all of us. There was this old couple, and a friend went to visit that old couple, and the friend asked that man, Fred, who was the uh, husband, that I heard you were losing your memory and you couldn't remember passwords, etc. But you went to a memory clinic last month, right? How was it? Then my husband said, yeah, it was wonderful. They taught us brilliant techniques of memorizing through visualization, association, and it was really helpful going to that memory clinic. So the friend asked, what was the name of that memory clinic? And this old man started thinking and thinking and thinking. After a few minutes, he smiled and he said, what do you call that flower with a long stem and thorns? And that man said, rose. He said, exactly. He turned and he said to his wife, Rose, can you tell me what was the name of that memory clinic? So we're all losing memory in that capacity, and we need something like face recognition, etc., to come out of this. So thank you, Rohit, for that wonderful introduction, for that wonderful talk about how technology is changing. So I'll just ask a few questions now. Shankar, very quickly, suppose I were to give you a crystal ball and gaze into the future, correct? And what the future holds for accessibility in the next. You have touched upon it very slightly in the first question which you answered. But let's say in the next 10 years, if I were to take you to 2032, how do you see the world with accessibility?
See, for me, I think, the world, there is a rich and the developing and the poor countries. There are disabled people across the globe. Unfortunately, the access to all the tools and all the things that we are talking about is unfortunately not reaching the bottom of the pyramid. I think by 2030, the cost of these tools will come down drastically and people will be able to afford. Many a times, if you're talking about Alexa, if somebody who's disabled and lives in let's say Kodiva, it's one of the poorest country, right? In Ivory Coast, how will he or she be able to get it? For me, one is having all these technologies, all this accessibility, but are they able to reach all the people? whom this will go and benefit. Not by somebody giving a charity or writing some endowment, but the cost of the technology itself comes so low and it'll be able to access the self-driving car that we talked about. But is it realistic for other parts of the world? So that is something that in the next 10, 15 years, I really wish, where all these technologies can also meet the actual customers or consumers who might want it. I think that's how, my wishful thinking is.
So wonderful. So you have to combine accessibility with affordability, because just accessibility not only to some strata of society who can afford it, but also to those people who actually need it but cannot afford it. Brilliant thought, Shankar. And Travis, just asking you this question, like, because you've been in the design department for a long time, and mm, when you design a product, do you actually take into consideration accessibility, or is it done very ad hoc after people have complained about it and after people have said that it's not accessible? Because when we were in college, we used to have a saying, catch them young and watch them grow, because if you catch them old, you'll watch them die. So what do you have to say, Travis?
Thank you, Rajdeep. We definitely do, but I will say it hasn't always been that way. And, part of the journey that we have been on is to close that gap and to consider those things early in the process. From business perspective, it makes a lot more sense to, fix the mistake while it's on paper versus when we, start building it and releasing it to customers. And that to me has been the biggest part of our transformation, is one, recognizing that there was a gap in our process, and then actually, addressing that so it doesn't become an afterthought. And that's not to say that we do everything perfect. Perfect has never been the goal. We learn a little every month. But to me, the most profound change that we want to make, and we're actively trying to make on our teams, is representation. The way to build a more diverse, inclusive, and accessible experience for our customers is to hire people with differences and different abilities and allow them to participate in the design of our software. Until we have that representation, we will always be designing for a perspective that is not ours. And as designers, we generally do that anyway. But for something so fundamental like a person's ability, to speak or have motor function or to hear, it's important to have those people on the team and giving you that perspective, from day one.
Wonderful. So have people in the team with disability so that they can ingrain it. And very true. There was a story where there was a place in a hill station where a lot of these couples used to commit suicide because of love issues. And one of the suggestions was to keep an ambulance down and take them to the hospital as soon as they fall. But another suggestion was to build a wall on that suicide point so that they don't commit suicide at all. So I think so. The question is about building the wall or hiring an ambulance. Rohit, what do you have to say? 1 million websites across the globe in 2020, out of which hardly around 5 to 8% of them are accessible. So what do you think is the reason why accessibility hasn't caught on so much as it should have in these so many years?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because there is a lot of awareness today, and there is a lot of discussion, and we are in this discussion, and we're still saying that after all that we've done and we're doing, most of the applications, products, and sites are not completely accessible, or some of them have probably not even taken shape at this point. But really, when I started to think about this, and I started to look at what could be the potential reasons why this is happening despite all the awareness, I think we've done really well in terms of defining standards and policies and compliance and all of that. But what is really missing is how we take it from that standard and policy to an implementation. I think that has been very patchy, and the reason for that patchiness has been that we're only talking about this in terms of, hey, you need to be compliant with this standard or you need to be compliant with this policy, rather than kind of switching it around to say, what are the tangible goals that we are actually trying to achieve out of this from an accessibility standpoint? And actually, and having everyone kind of focus on that, as against saying, oh, we met this standard of W3C, or we met this standard of ADA, or whatever are those standards that are out there that different countries have. So in reality, we need to get everyone kind of striving for an outcome rather than kind of a, okay, I did this and I checked the box and I kind of did this. So that's like one of the areas. Then when I think of, how do organizations kind of react to this, generally there is a perception, that this isn't really catering to the larger use cases. Profitability might be a problem if we try to kind of build, because the cost of building some of this could be very high. And really, because are we working in a narrow market, and should we be really focusing on the 80-20 rule, and all these things which keep coming up when you think of design. So really, it's a perception that needs to be broken at some point of time, and really focus on being more inclusive, because there are so many people who more customers we can really get. Even if we think of Walmart, we are missing a bunch of customers if we aren't really catering to those use cases. So the third one that really comes to my mind is just you've got different, I call institutional actors, right? And these institutional actors inadvertently slow down processes. Everybody's intent is good, but they're looking at it from different lenses. So, somebody is looking at it from a lens of profit, somebody is looking at it from a lens of inclusivity, somebody is looking at it from a lens of, market share, somebody else is looking at it, in terms of competition. And sometimes when you're looking at it from all these different lenses and there's no common goal that you're kind of going to, again, I go back to the common goal, it really pulls people with good intent in different directions and kind of slows down what you're trying to do in terms of accelerating as well. And so, that's something to really think about and see how and those common goals can really bring all these different perspectives together to try and make sure that we're all pulling the ship in the same direction, as against kind of going our own ways and having our own focuses. And last, I think Travis touched upon this a bit in terms of institutional attitudes and cultures, right? It's in terms of being, wanting to be more inclusive. It's about trying to make this not an afterthought, but really looking to do this upfront. And I really think there are three things that we should look to try and change in order to make this happen. One is really trying to build those common goals, trying to build organizational standards, and really intentionally driving some of these initiatives. And encouraging innovation in this space as well, right? We do a lot of, at least at Walmart, we do a lot of hackathons, and we do a lot of technology hackathons, and we're really trying to now make sure that some of the themes of these hackathons are actually related to some of these key problems that need to get solved, so that we can actually look at using the crowdsourced. Our own associates as crowdsourcing this problem and trying to see what solutions can come back, and you never know where a great idea can come from. So, these are some of the things that I think are probably preventing us from really being fully accessible.
Rohit, thank you so much for that exhaustive answer. You reminded me of my physics teacher. He kept speaking and he taught us very interesting lessons while he was speaking. One lesson which he taught us was to burn a paper without using a matchstick, and you might have done it in your school. We take a paper outside and we focus the rays of the sun through a magnifying glass. And when the magnifying glass, the rays focus on the paper, after a few minutes, it starts burning. So as you said, people look at it with different lenses, but if they have a common goal and a common focus, you can actually set this entire result on fire, rather than keeping the paper for hours in the sun with divergent thinking and with divergent fields not happening. And the second thing was very interesting, which you talked about, was our physics teacher used to ask us a question, and he used to say there were 5 birds on the branch of a tree, and 3 of them decided to fly. How many are left? And we all used to shout 2. And he said, no, only 5, because 3 only decided to fly. They did not fly. So standards are like that, we decide that we have to follow them, but the implementation is totally different. So thanks for telling us those things. So we've actually run out of time. We've had a wonderful panel discussion on the future of accessibility in the next 5 years, 10 years. We have a huge hope And let me end with a small story of love and hope. I have a friend who has lost both his hands. His name is Abhiram, and he has a girlfriend. Uh, and I asked him, "What did you gift your girlfriend this time for Valentine's Day?" He said, "I gifted her a Bluetooth jacket." I said, "What is this Bluetooth jacket?" He said, Rajdeep, this is a jacket which has ribs on it. And if I send an SMS message, hug, the Bluetooth jacket actually goes and hugs my girlfriend instead of me hugging my girlfriend. So accessibility has gone through different fields, not only in understanding, but also you can, with Travis, Rohit, Shankar, if you happen to buy it, if you are very busy at work, you can always look at buying a Bluetooth jacket, right? For your near and dear ones, right? So with that amazing story of love and hope, and hoping that the future of accessibility is bright and there is lot to be done, but we hope these small discussions can actually make this accessibility a reality. I hand it back to the organizers, Krishna and Soumya.
Thank you, Rajdeep. And yeah, it was indeed a great beginning for our Guard Week. And yeah, thanks to all our sponsors, Cisco, Walmart, and NASCOM Foundation. And yeah, once again, thank you, Shankaran, Rohit, and Travis, and in fact Rajdeep for moderating so well. In fact, I myself is a wheelchair user, so if I look back like 15 years from now, right, it
Mm,
was so challenging in terms of to buy
mm,
something or to go somewhere. But now
mm,
I can do all those things in just my phone, right?
mm,
I can get anything I want. So technology is
mm.
advancing to yeah, and yeah, it's a long way to go. And with that, yeah, I thank everyone for joining today, and hope we had a great experience.